You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, we are Enterprise Splaining, the podcast where we explain Star Trek Enterprise to each other and to you. I'm Jamie, and these are my co-hosts Maria.
Hello.
And Bill.
Hello.
And our guest from last week, Topher, is back. Hi, Topher.
Hello.
Topher, I know that you introduced yourself last week, but since it's been a whole week, can you do another short intro just as a refresher? Let our listeners remind them who you are, why you're here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Topher Hunter. By day, I am a professional science communicator for a small med device firm. And otherwise, I like to dally around with making props and goofing around in nerdery and science.
And by night, he's a masked vigilante, known only as El Chupacabra.
You're not supposed to tell people that, Bill.
Well, he started it.
Our mission today is a second contact. Last week, I told Maria, Bill, and Topher what happened on the Star Trek Enterprise episode, A Night in Sickbay. They have now watched the episode and are back with their thoughts. So make sure that you listen to last week's episode before you listen to this one. I mean, you could start with this one, but it would be weird. You should probably go back and listen to last week's.
Then it wouldn't make any sense.
Heaven forbid.
Let's start with Maria. What do you think about A Night in Sickbay?
So I liked a Porthos-focused episode as expected. However, it was not really a Porthos-focused episode since it was mostly a stuffed animal in a box for most of the episode. I generally thought it was a fine episode. The biggest problem I had was it didn't know what it wanted to be. It was this weird juxtaposition of very silly and goofy antics of them like leaping around sickbay chasing a bat. And then, but on the other side, like Archer was just so angry through it all. And I would understand if he was angry because his dog was sick, but he was angry to begin with. He was angry across the board. And it was really kind of annoying to me. And he just kept doing things, and then, like, he chose to go to sickbay and stay there, and then, like, bitched about how noisy it was when Phlox was just fucking trying to do his normal, presumably, routine. Also, I never, ever need to see Phlox's toenails. Ever. That was the most disgusting scene.
I told you.
Oh my god, it was so disgusting.
Was that worse than the pile of women from the Acquisition episode?
Yes, because at least the pile of women was, like, not hideous. Visually worse, theoretically less worse.
Bill, what did you think of the episode?
I think this is fundamentally a measure of how much this show has broken all of us, is that Maria described it as, this was okay.
Fucking...
As we do, this show is over 20 years old. It's impossible to avoid spoilers, but this comes up regularly as one of the reasons why people stopped watching Enterprise. This episode fundamentally breaks Star Trek, this show being a Star Trek episode, because I cannot conceive of any other circumstance where a captain would behave like this. The only other time we've seen this is some Kirk episodes where he's being, like, mind tortured, or the episode of Next Gen where Picard mind melds with Spock's dad to take on the burden of the 100 years of emotion that this man has bottled up and it's coming up. No, this is just Archer on a day. Yeah. This is just him potentially disabling his ship because he's pissed off about his dog. I cannot conceive how this episode made it to television. Like, somebody wrote this, it got approved, and Scott Bakula, who was the star of the show and had some pull, said, okay, let's do this.
I think that if prior to this, if Archer had a different personality, like if he had a calmer personality and didn't seem to blow up at stuff, and then Porthos is in danger and suddenly he's doing this.
Sure.
Context-wise, I would feel totally differently about this episode.
Then it's the left-hand swerve that it's not even his dog that he's upset about. It's the fact that he's horny for T'Pol that really pushes. It's like a car teetering on the edge of a cliff, and then somebody just comes by and kicks it off.
Yeah.
And now it's just, I don't even know. This feels like a joke episode.
The horny for T'Pol storyline, like, I had actually blocked it out till you just said that, because it's so stupid and ridiculous. Like, what? That makes no fucking sense whatsoever. And Phlox being like, oh, you're just acting like this because you're horny for T'Pol. No, you're acting like this because you're being a child. Also, why the fuck would you take Porthos on this mission? I know we talked about this, but why would he take Porthos on that mission?
No,
there is no reason for that. Like, we know this alien culture is super oversensitive and we desperately need something for them. Let's take a dog.
The first time I watched it, I was so confused every time, like, Phlox would bring up something about T'Pol, because I'm like, what does any of this have to do with T'Pol? And it was all the way until the dream sequence that I was like, just confused about the dynamic. Like, I didn't really understand what it was trying to do, because there was no part of me that thought, oh, the problem is that T'Pol and Archer have the hots for each other. We've never seen that.
They have never even hinted at any chemistry between those two characters. Between T'Pol and Trip, sure. Have that conversation with Trip, no problem. I can totally buy into that. But there's never been anything even vaguely like that could vaguely be construed as flirtatious, or even, I'm not sure they like each other, like, much less have feelings for each other, you know? It's so weird.
Here's a fix for this episode. Archer is off. He's on a mission with the shuttle pod. He's not even there. It was Trip who accidentally got Porthos ill, and now he's freaking out about that because it's Archer's dog. And then we work in the T'Pol stuff.
That could have worked as like a Keystone Cops kind of way to do the same story, but I think they could have done almost exactly the story they did if they had just made it so that, you know, okay, something happened, something screwed up, Archer's got to apologize, but you know what? Archer's just got to say, look, my head is not in this. I am really worried about my dog. Right. Please, you know, Trip or T'Pol, take charge of this, handle this apology, please. And then the aliens could be saying, hey, why are you? And you could have had an interesting discussion of maybe this weird thing that humans develop these emotional attachments to an entirely different species, a non-sentient species. Like, we don't understand that. That could have been Star Trek.
A subservient quadruped. I wrote that down because I loved that line.
There is no universe in which the captain should be of a starship in Star Trek should be behaving this way.
Oh, absolutely. I would have taken out all of his anger and his bullshittery and just made him he's emotionally compromised.
That would be agreed.
Right. So he's openly admitting, I am not emotionally capable. I'm not capable of decoupling my emotions. Then you could have had an interesting thing with T'Pol even.
That was the crazy thing, is that when they thought they killed 3,000 people on the planet and Archer was feeling the guilt, T'Pol went to Phlox and said, you should monitor him. He's acting irrationally. Maybe we should remove him from command because of this. This guy's flipping out over his dog, and I love dogs, and it doesn't occur to anyone to say.
Yes.
But the point is, I think the thing that I struggled with was he wasn't flipping out over his dog. I mean, he was eventually, but he was flipping out from the very first moment of that episode because he was so angry that the aliens wanted him to play by their rules. That's literally why he was mad. Like, he did not agree that their rules were right, and therefore he was in the right, and that's why he was so mad.
Yep.
I have a couple other notes, but the one note that I have was when he finally does his little weird chainsaw dance thing. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I think it's T'Pol who compliments him and says he handled it with finesse. I think it's very appropriate that his finesse involved a chainsaw. Like, there is like, that seemed intentionally funny to me.
Topher, did you have any thoughts?
I mean, underscore everything that's been said. I think not having had to endure the episodes quite like y'all have, only doing it vicariously through you. Quite frankly, I'm really disappointed in Scott Bakula as an actor. I cannot understand how he didn't push back and say, this is inconsistent with my character, or this is being a man-child, and I'm a better actor than this. I don't understand what happened.
I'm not sure it's inconsistent with his character, though. Yeah. Archer's kind of a dick. That's the fundamental problem, is that what Scott Bakula should have said is, this character is fundamentally broken. Like, this is not a starship captain. That's what I don't understand about this entire series.
And isn't it funny that, especially in some of the newer shows, we've seen fundamentally broken captains. And we've seen really interesting story arcs with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not expecting him to be perfect. I'm expecting him to be competent.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Or for the show to just recognize when he's not being competent. Like, I think that if the show, like, if others on the show recognized that this is not how a captain should be acting, and that we're actually, like, T'Pol tried to bring it up and would just, like, he would just attack her for it. If the story was about that, I just think that that would have been better. And it seemed like that's almost what it was trying to do, but not quite. Like, he learned how to apologize. This is a grown man.
Right.
In a very important position of power where other people's lives literally depend on him. And it was an entire episode about how he learned how to apologize.
And they said this, because I have a note about it. They said this in the episode. He is a trained diplomat. Is he, though? Nothing about him has indicated that he is a trained diplomat. I do not think that is correct.
I have a meta theory about this, that this show, and we've talked about that they didn't get Star Trek writers for this. I think they assumed that, Star Trek fans will watch anything that is Star Trek related. So I think that this show is for tweens. Much in the way that, like, Beverly Hills 90210 was set in a high school, but I think that it was targeted towards people who are younger than high school. So I think that this is being targeted towards a 12 to 14-year-old audience.
Really?
12 to 14-year-old boys, no less.
Boys. Oh, sure. Boys. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's 100%. Fair. That's fair.
I need you guys to know that I have seen Melrose Place, and if you go back and think of the years and my age, you will realize that I was in elementary school when I was watching Melrose Place with my parents. I was far too young to be watching Melrose Place. That might be how I first learned about sex. So you get a little bit of Jamie lore.
my other minor critique is that during the dream sequence funeral, Jamie, I specifically, you said that Phlox was delivering the eulogy, and I specifically asked, do we see him dressed as a priest? And you said, I don't think we even see him. We fully see him in a priest costume with a wraparound collar, and I lost my mind. I wasn't even angry because I was so happy to be surprised by seeing this. It was amazing.
I did not even clock that. I watched it twice and didn't even clock that.
As usual, Phlox was fantastic in this. He, as always, just did. And there's this could have been so much more fun if Archer just wasn't such a downer through it all, because there was all of this sort of slapstick, them running around Sickbay with nets trying to catch the bat. Hoshi catching that bat was amazing. It was so good.
Yeah, one of my only notes that I wrote down was John Billingsley is a treasure.
He
was so good.
He's so good in
think
this.
back to the episode when he and Cutler were talking about his polycule. Every time he has a chance to deliver one of those backstory bits, he does it with such pathos and compassion. Mm-hmm. It's just he's so good at those line deliveries.
Yeah, he's just great.
Yeah, what did you guys think about the stuff that we learned about Phlox's children?
I thought it was really sweet. He misses his family, and then was it one of his sons or one of his sons who he just doesn't speak to anymore? They've been estranged or whatever. And I thought that was really again, Billingsley does a great job of sort of being, emotional about it, but still holding back, as you would expect.
Actual nuance
Yeah.
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 Someone portrays an emotion without screaming on this show. It's kind of amazing.
Exactly. I know there are good actors on this show. I know Scott Bakula is a good actor. I just think he's been directed poorly to just be, and the character that he's representing is such a dick that it's very hard for him.
Everything except the writing on this show is good.
I think the only other note that I had was I know that theoretically he learned how to apologize. He never apologized to Paul. To be fair, she kept saying, you don't need to apologize, it's fine. But he fucking needed to apologize.
Wait, he didn't apologize to her? I thought he did.
Not really.
He said the words, I apologize. At one point.
Maybe he did, but
I don't think he said sorry, but he said, I apologize, which I feel like is an apology.
Yeah, but she also kept like saying, no, you don't need to. No, it's fine, which is just enabling his terrible behavior. Let the man apologize. He should.
Do you guys have anything else? Any other thoughts?
A staggeringly bad episode. Like, we've had badly written episodes and boring episodes, but this one is just completely off the beam. This was not a Star Trek episode.
But it was fun.
I guess.
You didn't find it fun at all? Like
I will grant you it wasn't boring.
Yeah, it was sort of fun. I just felt like it could have been so much more fun if Archer just wasn't like, he just put this big dark cloud over everything he was doing. And he was just like, oh, I've got, like just another thing to deal with. I did have one question for Topher about like the Porthos situation. So at one point, he fully submerges Porthos and then drills a hole in his head.
It's Star Trek.
Doesn't seem right.
Technobabble bullshit. Yeah, anybody doesn't even drill in the right spot. Is
That's right.
What we needed was Phlox referring to a big book that he's flipping the pages as he's doing this, and he goes, "Wait a minute, these pages were stuck together. Hold on."
Yeah, I don't understand. They don't even, to my mind, explain why they have to submerge him in goo, and
they said something like it puts less stress on his system or something.
Being drowned
that.
puts
None
no
of that
stress.
made any sense
on
to
his
me.
pulmonary system.
Yeah,
being drowned is not stressful for your lungs.
Stressful. The dog's, his autoimmune system collapsed. Then he went into anaphylactic shock. Then they had to replace his pineal gland, during which they medically drowned him.
Yeah, that was actually one of the big reasons for me that I didn't find it as fun, just because anytime an animal and a dog is in danger, I'm like, it's stressful for me. That just bothered me. There was this underlying, I knew nothing was going to happen to Porthos. I knew he was going to be fine, but I just hate the idea of an animal in distress. So I think that was part of why I was like, stop trying to be funny when just fix the dog. And then we can be funny after that.
Well, before we go, we don't usually have a person with knowledge of anything on this show.
Certainly not me.
Nope.
We have Topher. So before you leave, I figured we could talk about other medical science on Star Trek. I think it's very clear that this episode was not good on that front. But how is Star Trek in general with medical science?
Oh boy, we're gonna need an hour for that.
Do we currently have a pill that can cause a kidney to regrow in minutes?
No. Of course, it's science fiction. It's far future, and we've got faster than light travel and beaming and ray guns and all this fun stuff. So there's a certain conceit of course things are going to be different. And I think, to me, the biggest frustration I have, and part of it is, you have to acknowledge that this is a children's show or a children-friendly show that's going to go on during prime time and stuff. So there's only so much gruesomeness you can expose them to. But to my mind, the only episode that ever did anything truly interesting in medicine, there were great episodes on medical ethics, but an actual episode that was interesting on medicine would be the one, and minor spoiler, Strange New Worlds season 2. There's an episode where we flash back to the Doctor and Nurse Chapel back in pre-Enterprise assignment, and it's kind of this. It's this I suppose MASH would be the closest. It's not funny, but it's this. They're in a forward surgical station dealing with incoming casualties, and maybe it's because my heart has always been closest to emergency medicine. It's one of the only times when we got to really start to think about, okay, you got all these advanced technologies, but bodies still break, bodies still bleed. You still have to do something. You think about it on the Enterprise or wherever, they do not have an emergency medicine corps, right? There are no paramedics. There's nothing that we could recognize as an emerge department because they just beam them straight to the surgical suite and deal with it right away.
I mean, hell, Phlox doesn't even seem to have any assistants. It's just fucking Phlox.
Yeah.
It's real weird.
Yeah, it is really, and Phlox wasn't even supposed to be on the ship. So who was the original doctor? I don't understand what's going on.
I think in the first episode they talk about there was supposed to be another doctor, but he was unavailable.
Yeah, because they had to leave early, so he couldn't come with them. But
where are the assistants? Was there never going to be any assistants?
Yeah, there should absolutely, you should have physician's assistants, you should have surgical nursing staff, you should have ICU nursing staff, and you kind of, again, Strange New Worlds probably is, there's sometimes some bustle in the background that there's hints that there's other staff that we just, for story reasons, we don't bring them in, but
yeah. I
did find I was curious about basically that question. So I was like, well, our closest analogy now would be the U.S. Navy. So I pulled up some information. And currently, on cruisers, destroyers, etc., they'll typically have one Navy corpsman. So they're basically roughly trained like an advanced care paramedic in civilian circles. And that's the only medical staff on board those smaller ships. The only place where they have MDs is on the carriers. So the idea being that because they're usually traveling in battle groups, you would somebody injured on a cruiser or a destroyer would be transferred to a carrier, and then it'd be cared for there. And if that's not sufficient, they're then transferred to land where, that doesn't work when you're 3 years away from home.
Right.
Yeah, that's the problem is if you're on a ship in the sea, they have ways, if there was really an emergency, they just need to be stabilized until they can get to a port.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that, with every other Star Trek, there are clearly, medical staff, but they presumably have access to other medical facilities because it's a much more developed universe. It would make more sense for, the TNG Enterprise to only have one doctor versus this. These guys should have a fucking corps. It's ridiculous that they only have one guy.
Even cruise ships have a real doctor. Haven't you guys seen Dr. Odyssey on a cruise ship? Sure, he's got a staff. I haven't actually seen Dr. Odyssey.
So yeah, I think that's where my biggest disappointment is, that we don't get to go into some of the nitty gritty. Where's ER in Star Trek? Cross those two shows together, and I will watch the shit out of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's 83 people on the ship. Even just typical maintenance medical stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
Yeah. It's just fundamentally a bad idea. To have you need 24-hour care. You need 24-hour access to the medical bay. One person physically can't do that.
And what if something happens to him?
Right.
What if he's the one who's sick?
But even if nothing happens to him, is he working 24 hours a day? He can't. You can't staff with one person. That's just not how that works.
Well, it's okay because he sets it up with alarms that wake him up.
You get the Antarctica situation of having to do your own appendectomy.
Oh my God.
Topher, what is some of the worst medical science that you've ever seen on Star Trek?
Oh God. There's so much hand-wavy stuff where we have a magic pill for that. It's okay. Right. And then 3 episodes later, they'll be, we can't treat it. We have no idea how. What happened to your magic pill? Probably the one of the most egregious things to me is the imaging and diagnostic capability they have of waving a wand over somebody and suddenly they can get an MRI, CT, plain X-ray. They can do blood chemistry all by completely non-contact.
And they can do it like in seconds secretly.
Those tricorders are amazing. Those medical tricorders.
Yeah.
They're always like secretly doing it on people, and I'm like, this feels like a serious privacy.
Yeah, it's a real HIPAA
issue.
violation. There's a lot of HIPAA concerns in Star Trek.
The idea that you can just have this like tiny little thing that you can hold in your hand and walk around and like find out everything about somebody else's biology.
Yeah, that's fair.
This brings us to the part of our second contact episode where we're going to do our read alerts. READ, not REED. We need to explain that these are read alerts. These are people who emailed us or donated to us. So, Bill, do you have anything for our read alerts today?
We do. We have some new donors to our Buy Me a Coffee, which, again, I totally had to push through, which is too unfortunate. I'm glad that people are donating, but we had a really great advertiser lined up. It was a new service, a new dating service called Mutter, run by Harry Mudd, which is if you're a dilithium miner and you want an attractive wife to come along. But then Jamie and Maria are like, oh, I don't think this is cool. This sounds like really... It's like, no, it's not actually a drug that makes you more attractive. It's just salt water. It's just like, they put makeup on and shoot them through a gauze filter. It's not actually a drug. It's like, I don't feel great about this.
I just wanted it to be called Mutterfucker.
That's the premium tier. So we have someone who donated who goes by, I'm going to mispronounce this, Pichobit. And they said, this is my favorite podcast. Presumably this is the only podcast they've ever heard in their life. And what's this strangeness here? Topher donated. What is going on here?
Topher, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I bought my way on, didn't I?
You cannot buy your way onto this podcast. So thank you to all of our Buy Me a Coffee donors.
I remain amazed that anybody would give us money, and we really appreciate it. It's great.
And that's the episode. Thanks for listening. Before we go, Topher, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you?
Sure. I can be found on the social medias, mostly Blue Sky, at Anisotoph, ANISOTOPH.
All right. Special thanks to K.O. Myers at Particulate Media for sound assistance, to our friend David for our beautiful cover art, and to John Stephen King for being the voice of our computer. If you liked the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast app of choice and tell your friends about it. We really appreciate it. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook as @EnterpriseSplaining and on Blue Sky as @EnterpriseSplain. You can also email us any comments or questions such as, can you treat an allergic reaction with antibiotics?
No.
Spoiler alert.
To enterprisesplaining@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. If you want to support this podcast and maybe have us thank you on the show, you can find us at Buy Me a Coffee as Enterprise Splaining. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Sorry, I don't have a script for this. I'm making it up.
Oh, just like on Star Trek Enterprise.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
When never mind. Take 2. Cut.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
When Wei-Yun said,
We can leave that in when Wei-Yun said. Did he ever say
I remember
that?
that episode.
Keith, you go second.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
Blindfolded
When
martial arts with glowy. Oops.
Find out on Earth Station Trek, a podcast about Star Trek. How terrible is it?
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.